Well, good morning, guys, and welcome to the show, Fernando.
Welcome to the show.
Today we have, well, I guess we're just gonna call it our favorite installs. An old car, a classic car, as you will, depending on your age. This was made before you were born. Not me. This is Plymouth Prowler. Now, this was definitely one of my favorite cars to ever come out. We never got to see a second version of it because Plymouth, well, they went out of business. Kind of sad. This is by far one of the coolest retro cars that came out in that time where like building the retro car was something to do. I mean, look at that. How awesome is this? It's not anything special as far as performance goes, but man, it just looks cool. You got this big ass tire in the back, wheels that stick out in the front. Oh man, this was a kick-ass ride back in the day. And like most things from back in the day, it probably should have stayed back in the day because now it's just this grape. I still think it's cool though. Let's hop inside and see what kind of cool technology they had back then. Getting into the car is always fun because this is as far as the door opens. It doesn't get any farther than this. So you have, you know, narrow amount of room. This was not made for a big person. It is also a convertible, which in my mind makes it probably the coolest feature on it, aside from the wheels sticking out like this. Inside the car had a center gauge cluster. There's nothing above the driver. Somebody's added this cool little RPM gauge. Not cool. So Tesla, here you go. Here's your instrument panel in the front of the car. These guys did it first. Gear shifter right here. We have our sock on it, of course, to protect this gear shifter. But as you can see, it's like from where you're sitting, you can't even see the controls. They have them down so low and out of the way. And this it's just, yeah, it's not a comfortable ride. Basic square Chrysler radio. This is what's referred to as a din and a half because it's 3.5 inches tall. They used to make radios that were this specific size. Got your little power port off to the side here. This one does have steering wheel controls. Are we gonna retain his steering wheel controls? No? Which he doesn't care to retain. And that's really about it. It's as basic as they come. And in the past, what you do is you just get the cassette to aux jack, plug it in your phone, and that's how you'd interface with this. But I don't even know if you probably still find those on Amazon. But it makes more sense for us to just pull this guy out, put a nice little Bluetooth receiver radio in it. Where it sits in the dash, it's gonna sit nice and low, so we need to make sure we have a really bright display screen that makes it easy to see. And he has requested purple lighting if we can do that. Plan is to find a radio that will do all those things for us. Before we do any of that, we need to get this radio out of the dash. These old cars, one of the reasons why we hate working on them is because they're old cars. They are going to be brittly plastic, especially when you're talking about something this old. Use as little power tool as you can. We have our panel tool here. If I can get my fingers in there, I'd much rather do that just because I can kind of feel the plastic, you know, kind of a little zen as it were. Just trying to, you know, yeah, but it's very nerve-wracking, but it just pulls off. We have one push in, a little tool to do that. This is old tech where you take plastic with metal clips. Most manufacturers try not to do that anymore because they've realized that it doesn't work out too well. Usually the plastic breaks long before the metal clip does, but these older cars, that's one of the problems. Two 10mm bolts, one in the side, one in the top, and that's it for holding it in. Radio is gonna pull out. I like to put my hand on the back corner of this big radio. There's two little clips on the top, and those are designed to lift up, and then the harness will come out. Now, one of the other things that was unique to this body radio was this here. They didn't put a ground in the radio, they just used a ground strap. It's a 10mm. And this is a radio. There's tons of room in this dash. Like it goes way in there. So there's plenty of room for harnesses and all that other fun stuff. You could also hide a small amplifier in there if you wanted to. With this out, let's head over to the bench. We'll take a look at the radio we're getting ready to put in there, as well as the dash kit we're gonna use to do the installation. Taking a closer look at the factory radio, this was high tech for back in the day. It had this cool joystick right here, which was your balance and fader, and it had a 5-band EQ right on the face of the radio. These things are gone now. Like most radios, we've just settled for bass, mid, and treble, which kind of stinks. This was a lot of fun. In my personal opinion, I feel some of these features would be nice if we could get these back in some of these modern cars. Everything now is just touchscreen, screens and very generic looking and no tactile anything. This was the end of that, which is a good thing too, because this radio was crap, but it looked cool. Let's take a look at the radio we're gonna use for this particular install. This is a JVC KDX37MBS. Big part number. Really what we're looking at in this radio and why we've chosen this for this car is, one, it has multicolor LED displays here. The customer requested that these lights be purple. And two, my biggest complaint with most Singleton radios is you can't see this display. It's too small, it's dark with some lighting on it, direct sunlight makes it totally invisible. With marine radios, however, which is what this is, they use this display screen, which is flipped, and you can see it in direct sunlight, makes it super easy to see. When we're doing cars that need a Singleton, we try to use these style radios. Inside the box, hands-free mic, power plug, the little tools to remove it from its cage, an instruction manual, and the radio itself. For those of you who've never seen one of these, this is what we refer to as the cage. This gets mounted into the dash kit and holds the radio. On the side here it has these, little push-in tabs here that have little teeth that lock into the side of the radio here and here. Those two keys that you just saw are designed to slide into this area, push these pins out, and then you can get the radio out of the dash. This is what's called the detachable face, meaning this comes off. While we're doing the installation, I like to leave this off. The reason for that is when you're doing a cage style radio, you have to push the radio in to lock it in place, which means you're pushing on the face of the radio. I don't like to push on this. I'd much rather push on that. The dash kit for this is the legendary 630 kit. This guy here is a unique, interesting, very generic kit. It's not the kit's fault. The reason why is because, as you can see, there's a screw here, there's a screw here. That's all that holds this radio, and this radio is super robust, and it's all integrated, and it's big, and it fills up the space. This kit is not, and the radio that's gonna go in it is small. What happens is that you only have 2 screw points, so it tends to do this and wobble. That's an issue, because what would always happen is the guy'd go over here to push something and the kit would move and they go, my radio, and so kit sucked, really. Now there's been better versions of it that have come out over the years that have little braces on it and all that fun stuff. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. What I've found over the years is it's easier just to take one of these kits and modify it to how you need it to be in order to work properly in the car, because they weren't consistent. So sometimes the new kits would work and sometimes they wouldn't, so you'd end up wasting time just trying to get something to work. And that cage that we have is designed to just slide into this hole here, and then on the cage it has all these little teeth, and those you fan up and they're designed to lock it in place. But before we do that, we need to hop back in the car and figure out what we need to do to this kit so that it doesn't wiggle. Looking at the kit, the first modification we have to make is to this corner here, because it's using this screw. The way the air conditioner sits means we have to modify this. We don't want to just remove it, because we want this strength to lean up against this area here to keep the kit from rocking on this side. Then you have this one here that's designed to rest on here. The other modification is on the back side. It has these pins, and this pin for this corner had to be removed because on the kit this is actually the screw hole and a pin, and the pin would go up on top of this, which it doesn't have. So the next step is to just fit it in with those modifications moved. If we screw this side in, then we have a nice balanced corner. So these two areas here are making enough contact that we're not going to have to worry about it twisting. However, on this side, this corner is still going to be a problem. The only thing we have to do is take a little piece of 1/4 inch and attach it to this corner so that it rests up against here. Nothing too spectacular. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to try to recreate this. It just has to be thicker. And to do that, I'll just cut a little piece of 1/4 inch ABS, glue it on. It's not fun getting in and out of that car. The idea is to take this little piece here, attach it onto the back side so that it sticks out just like that, mimicking this. For that, I'm going to use some CA glue, and I'll meet you guys back in the car. Glued it on. Also put a little piece of foam on the corners here and here so that it doesn't rattle against the plastic dash. And now we have a nice solid mount for our radio to go in. No matter where he presses the dash kit, it's not going to wobble in the dash. Fairly simple modification that ends a lot of heartache later on when the customer comes back upset because it's wobbling. Let's head back over there and we'll talk about putting that cage in and getting the harness wired up. For installing the cage, we're gonna need a flat flathead screwdriver. Simply slide it through the front. Push it in. It should lock in place because it has these little tiny clips here that are designed to do that. However, it's usually loose. It kind of depends on how thick the plastic is, but it's okay. Flathead screwdriver now. Looking on the back side, find the little V shape that is gonna give us the best lock, and then just pry that up. One of the things that people love to do with these is pry up every single one of these when they're putting it into a car. Don't do that. It doesn't make it any more secure. There's also some on the side here that work. Just find the 4 that work best for you and just push on it and it's all set. Depending on the install, you can either slide the radio in now and put the whole thing in, or if you have wires yet to run, you could just mount this back in, pull the wires out, and do everything after the fact. Just clicks in. Those teeth lock into place, and you now have a single DIN in the dash. This wiring harness is a bit silly how it's designed, and for those of you that ever put in a radio before, you recognize all the colors. They're all the same. You have yellow, which is memory, red is accessory, orange, white is illumination. You'll see there's no black here, which is the ground, because that was that long braided wire that was on the back of the radio. So you either have to attach to that or find another ground point in the car. It's easy enough to do either one. And then the blue is the amplified antenna if it has it, or amp turn on. What's unique about this harness is the white and gray with a stripe. Front negative wires are on this harness, and then all the other speaker wires are on the black harness. Lots of fun there, and that would always be interesting because it's like people would plug this in and then they'd be like, oh, where are my other, and they're like, on this plug. Ah, simple mistake. The JVC harness has all the same colors. It does have a long black wire, which is good because we're gonna need that, so we don't have to do anything with that. And then it has all your speaker wires and pairs that'll match up to these: red, the yellow, the orange, white. The only wire that is on here that is not on this, other than the black, is the blue with the yellow stripe, which is the steering wheel control input that this customer is not retaining. Otherwise, all these speaker wires are just going to attach color for color, however you would like to do that. And this is what our harness looks like when we're all done. Everything is insulated and protected, and the ground wire, we went with a ring terminal. The goal there is to just put a nut and bolt through it, similar to what the factory's doing, to finish that off. Let's hop into the car and I'll show you what I mean. Clip in the gray, the black. Ring terminal here, we have a nut bolt and 2 washers, just like any nut and bolt that you'd put in. Tighten it up, and the ground is all set and ready to go. You don't have to insulate this or anything. As you can see, this is a bare wire running through the car, so there's nothing that you need to do. You don't need to bundle this up with 6 layers of tape or anything like that. It's not gonna matter. Tuck this into the dash like so. Make sure you keep your Bluetooth mic cable out. The Bluetooth mic we ended up mounting here on the steering wheel with the tack. Pulled out one of the screws, drilled a new hole, and mounted that here. The reason for that is this is a metal piece, and there was no way to get our microphone up here without removing a ton of the car, which, as you know, on these old cars is not ideal situation to do. This puts the mic where it needs to be. It'll work great there. The back of the radio has this pink pigtail, which is for the mic. That plugged in. Power harness. The antenna. Put our 2 screws back in. When screwed in, do one more test. Now that the radio weight is on there, make sure that the dash kit is not wobbling around. The only piece that was attached to the front was the cigarette lighter adapter, so we don't have to worry about any weird control modules or anything like that needing to be plugged in. Put our face on. We want to turn it on and make sure it works before we snap this back into place. All right, we have audio, which is what we were hoping for. Gently push in those 4 quadrants where the clips were, and that's it. Our radio is mounted into place. The last thing we want to do this is go through the settings, set up our color. Alright, that makes purple. Go to zone 2. There we go, we have purple buttons now. I'm going to turn off this key beep because it's driving me crazy. And we'll go to the clock. And that gets our radio all set up. As you can see, this is what I was talking about, how bright this screen is. Makes it super easy to see anywhere in the car, which is great. And just like that, this Plymouth Prowler now has some new tunes with Bluetooth so that he can go cruise the street in like I don't know, whatever you do on a Prowler. Fernando, if you please.
On to the next one, guys.
You guys have a great night as always. We hope you enjoyed this flashback looking at old school radio installation. Plymouth Prowler, baby. One of a kind. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.